Hello, welcome to the Ginger and Chocolate Podcast. I'm your co-host Lindsay, along with Mike. Hey, Mike.
Hey, what's up, Lindsay? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So today we are going to talk about self-judgment and guilt and all those things that come up, imposter syndrome, when you are training for an endurance event. So we're going to get deep into that. But first, let's get a training update from you. How's the marathon training going?
It's coming along. We're just doing slow, short runs right now because I'm really trying to be conservative about not going out of the gate too fast. So marathon's in October, and I haven't ran consistently for a while, so I'm putting a lot of
Mm,
effort into just easing into it. I'm mostly lifting and then doing a little running too.
mm,
So
mm.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm motivated. I'm really looking forward to it. So with the differences this time is like towards the end of like my main Ironman stint I was racing and training more out of not out of guilt, but it's like something I should do versus being inspired to do it because I just put about 10 years or 8 years into it and
Mhm,
got tired of it after a little while. Got kind of a little burned out.
mhm,
Too much of a good thing, I think.
mhm. Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, I relate to that because I feel like I'm in the same place. Did my first triathlon in 2010, and right
Hmm.
now I'm, you know, uh, just taking a little break from it. But I am doing some endurance training because I'm going to do a big gravel riding camp. I think I mentioned that here
Yes,
before. I'm so excited.
I'm
um,
excited for you.
Thank you. um, so I've been doing a bunch of gravel riding, and I'm also doing the strength training we talked about, I think 2 episodes ago with
Hmm.
Diana. And so far so good. I'm having some hip issues, which had cropped up earlier this year as well. So I'm just sort of like you, trying to train, but also not get so crazy that I injure myself before the event.
Yeah, yeah. It's important because I think you got to be mindful of where you are, not where you have been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's that's key, and it's kind of nice to do a single event, right? Instead of
Uh
doing
huh.
the multi-sport. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, well, let's see. Do you want to get into our main set?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
All right. One thing I did was I looked up sort of what AI said about self judgment and guilt in training and how
Hmm.
that can affect performance. And the first thing it said is, if you're a high achiever, if you're a perfectionist, and if you are someone who has a strong sense of identity tied to performance, that you are sort
Hmm.
of, at risk for the extra self judgment and the guilt for non performing. So I don't know if you can relate to that, but I definitely do.
I think what I can relate to is not the performance in terms of time or placing, but just the identity of. For a while, I was Mike the Ironman guy, Mike the triathlon guy, and that my identity was wrapped into that. So if I didn't have a race or two or three for the calendar year, I wasn't sure who I was, and so that was the big identity right there.
Mm-hmm.
So struggle with that for a couple of years after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Same. We're on
Hmm.
the same page today.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
so we both talked about, identity, but the first thing that AI brought up is, which I think is a good point, is to identify the source of self judgment. So that can be identity, obviously. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but where are the real what's the real source of self judgment in this? It says, where are the feelings coming from? For example, unmet expectation, um, comparison to others, which is my big one.
Mm-hmm.
And then whose standards are you trying to meet? And then what would you say to a friend in your situation? So that's the first kind of questions I ask. And for me, the comparison to others is a huge one. And I'm on a team with really high achievers that are
Yeah.
athletically talented, so more
Mm-hmm.
so than I am. And so those women are going to Kona, like they're qualifying for Kona
Right,
that are
right.
in my,
It's just
you
not
know,
if, it's a when.
and they're in my age group. So I can't be like, oh, that's a
Yeah,
30-year-old.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. Uh-huh.
this woman is 54 and she's doing like a sub 11-hour Ironman. um,
Insane.
right. And yet it's like intellectual knowledge doesn't always help change
Mm-hmm.
the feelings.
No, it doesn't. You're
You know,
right. Like, just like you can know it's probably not good to eat ice cream every single day, but it doesn't change the feeling when you get that craving. Or for red vines, right?
well, I mean, I'm going to be honest and telling myself a little bit, which is I've been eating mint chip ice cream every day for like a good month to 5 weeks.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff, though. Yeah, but exactly. But to your point, it's like you can know something intellectually, but it's the feelings still happen, and the comparison is real too. When you think about it's a good thing in some ways to have the comparison, but it's a, I don't know, that razor's edge between comparing yourself negatively to other people or being inspired by other people around you to up your game, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. When is that? That you're right. That is the time to really find and self reflect on when are your thoughts inspirational from other people or when are
Mm-hmm.
they generating negative self talk. And I definitely find that so I'll just back up and say for me, and then I'd like to hear how you find it. But what the same people on my team that I compare to and that I fall short are the same people who inspire me. But what happens
Mm-hmm.
for me is I'll step back from the team and just start doing my own workouts because I'm like, fuck this. And then I'll miss everybody and I'll see what they're doing on, say, Strava. And I'll be like, I just miss them. I just want to be around them. I don't care how much quote unquote better they are than me at triathlon. Um, and so I'll go back to team workouts and then I'll have a month where they just ride away from me every freaking Saturday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like within
Yeah.
the first 20 minutes of the ride. I'm back with, the three other women who also aren't performing at that same level. But so it's sort of like when they're in my face and I can physically see them, I start to become less inspired by them and more comparing and feeling competitive and feeling like I'm falling short. And when I
Mm-hmm.
don't see them and I see them on Strava, I feel inspired by them, which is a really bizarre way to look at it, but that's what's happening for me.
Well, I think there's a couple things going on for people like us, and there's the comparison. Um, it can also be to our own life situation. The thought of mortality and the thought of getting older, and the thought of
Mm,
like, am I doing enough, and all the common fears and anxieties people have is like, am I enough? Who I am, right?
hmm
And
hmm
then
Yeah.
it's a tough one because it's like, is my identity wrapped up in my achievement of how many finisher medals I have from different races, or
Mm,
how many times I've done something or podiumed or whatever it is. And then that I think will come out no matter who you are. And
hmm
I think that when that hits me, I start thinking, okay, who am I? Is my identity wrapped up just in the sport? Because that can be taken away. An injury, a
Mm-hmm.
sickness, a life circumstance, that can be taken
Yeah.
away. And can I race in such a way
Mm-hmm.
that I can draw from inspiration and not from guilt, or not from, I need to do this or else I'm not good enough?
Right.
So,
Right. That makes total
yeah,
sense.
it ties up to something bigger for me
Um,
too, because, oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I want to hear what I was going to ask you a question. So go for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing with, it's my work too with veterans. It's been inspiring, but it's also a theme in my life has been survivor's guilt, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
don't do this, I'm letting people down,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had to take a serious look at this, when I've done my own, therapy and work with a professional. And can I operate in such a way that I'm not doing it out of guilt, or this kind of impending doom, but can I be inspired to help people? So I think I bring that up because we can approach racing and training in the same way. There's the mundane day to day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like getting up and doing this that everyone's going to face, because motivation only lasts so long, and discipline is really the, the good way to operate, doing stuff even when you don't feel like it, if you know it's good for
Mm-hmm.
you. But the guilt and inspiration, I think we can change that by our self-talk, examining ourselves, meditating, letting those thoughts air out, and then just having a
Mm-hmm.
strong why, recommitting to that, and jumping into it.
Yeah, that's a good point. The strong why is so important because the next question that comes up on this, and I'd like to hear what you think about this, but it says whose standards are you trying to meet? And so if you have
Mm-hmm.
a why, sort of that's setting the standard. Otherwise, whose standards are you trying to meet? how do you how do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? What do you struggle with in terms of standards?
I see the high achievers, especially when I was,
Mm-hmm.
at a master swim team, seeing people who were great athletes and just maybe high performers in the pool, and maybe, went to nationals or did this in college. And then it'll bring me back to, oh, well, I didn't play sports in college. I didn't have a sport in college. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any athletic career in high school. And then it brings me back to my past failures. And I start thinking like, oh man, I'm a piece of crap for not, not being a high achiever then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, I've achieved, I'm proud of the things I've achieved, and I like the path I took,
Mm-hmm.
through the military, and then coming back, and then getting into endurance sports after active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But that comparison to other people, and only looking at the good parts and trying to meet someone else's standards, is real. And if you do that,
Right,
then
right.
you'll never be good enough, because you're not that person, and you're different. And it's hard because you miss the big context of, wow, I have a body that's allowing me to do what it's allowing me to do. When there are people who
Mm-hmm.
are not able to, or maybe just don't have that connection with endurance sports like we do, and understand the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's people who don't have the resources to pay for races or go to different localities. And so,
Right,
not taking joy in other people's misfortunes, but realizing that we have a
right.
privilege to do this, and that changes it, because then we can operate from like, oh, I have
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, or to do what I do. I have the availability, and being grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. I like framing it that way. Um, the second section that was brought up on my research was to one way to deal with the guilt and self judgment is to reframe your relationship with performance, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where you went with that. It's like this is a privilege, actually, and it's very easy to forget that. It's
Yeah.
easy for me to forget that this is a hobby too. you know, I'm not actually getting
Right.
paid for this,
Oh,
um,
exactly.
and so
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
Getting wrapped
yeah,
up in it.
performance does
It's
not equal self worth.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, exactly. It's just, and I think some of it, like I have a friend who's very athletically gifted, and he actually set the world record. It's in Guinness Book of World Records for the most half Ironmans in a year. We'll get him on the show,
Oh,
but I think he did like
yeah.
26. And he ran a
Holy
marathon because that wasn't
shit.
enough. Yeah, and he's fast. So I was like, well, he's a Marine too. If he's a Marine, I'm a Marine. I should be able to do that. And my body's not there. My body's not there.
Right.
And then
Hmm.
I started thinking, okay, going back into the inspiration, I can compare myself to someone else and try to meet his standards all day long and just feel bad about that I'm not there. Just like, you feel bad about you're not at the finish line if you're still racing, and you think about the finish line the whole
Right.
time. Think about something or somewhere you're not is an easy way to get disheartened. But then I think,
Yes.
yeah, I've had a few injuries and my body is what it is. And I've gone from someone who couldn't run a few miles because I was so out of
Hmm.
shape to someone who's, finished a few Ironman triathlons and done some open water swims of significant distance, and has been able to be part of just a wonderful sport of triathlon and trail racing and open water swimming. And then I
Hmm.
started thinking, man, what if I hadn't found this? Where would I be? I don't know. But
Hmm.
then I started thinking of the gratitude of being here. And it's like, man, like I got to meet you, Lindsay, through this sport, right? Now we have this podcast
Yeah.
together. I've got to meet all
That's
these people
crazy to
that,
me.
right? Right? Our lives intersected because of the sport. Yeah.
I think so. In AA, we have a saying, progress, not perfection. And
Mm-hmm.
that just means, in your program, continue to make progress. You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't need to do the steps perfectly. The only thing you should do perfectly is, to the extent you can, not pick up drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, all the other bag of crap that comes with having a mental health challenge is not there. You don't have to perfectly overcome that, perfectly address that. It's progress.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of training, if I can remember, it's progress, not perfection. And I can take areas where I may have had a quote unquote failure and use that as data instead of as a means
Mm-hmm.
of flogging myself for being a bad person or whatever, however I
Yeah.
frame it.
Right. Right.
um, I can make progress, right? I can't make progress if I'm like, oh, I'm a piece of crap because I didn't finish this race or I didn't show up for this
Mm-hmm.
race even. Um, you know, but more like, okay, why did I not show up for this race? That just happened with Wildflower for me. I signed up. It was a team race. Everyone's going. And I got injured, but then I was going to heal in time to do the race. But during the injury, I realized I wasn't even upset at the thought of not being able to go.
Mm.
And this time, instead of looking at it as a failure on my part, like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to go do this race? You need to just go get it done. I thought,
Uh-huh.
why is it I don't care?
Yeah.
And that's when I came to the realization, like right now, racing triathlon is not something that's giving me joy. And so the whole
Yeah.
point of this was joy, stress relief, etc. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I was able to pivot away and go, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want a gravel ride. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing now. And it feels much better.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think there's
Mm,
a lot of leftover stuff, baggage we carry around, and kind of in our own histories, ancient thoughts of self worth being tied into performance and how we do and what we think we
mm,
should be doing, how we should feel. And so for me, the question becomes, okay, I can know it like in my head of
mm.
don't let my identity get caught up in achievement. But then the question is, how do we feel it, right? How do you actually feel it and not just know it? Because knowing something but
Right.
not feeling it I don't think it's the whole thing. I think that the key is to actually connect with it too on an emotional level. And what helped me is I've been able to use this powerful experience I had. I had this epiphany. I was training up for this 24-hour endurance event called Go Ruck Heavy. And so you
Mm-hmm.
basically you're led by former Army Special Forces guys who have you carry logs and other people and do like a mini version of like what their selection for Special Forces. And you wear a backpack with 40 to 60 pounds in it, and
Oof.
it's long, it's miserable, but I wanted to do it. And as I kept getting closer and closer to it, I kept having I was having panic attacks. I was having a lot of anxiety around it, and I was going to quit. And then I was meditating,
Mm,
and I realized I had this epiphany where I was like, oh, this is leftover stuff from war. And
mm,
once I realized this was leftover stuff from war, I said, oh, okay. It put the feelings in context. And then I didn't have to identify with them. I didn't have to take them in and get wrapped up in them. I could have a little bit of separation and distance and see like,
mm-hmm.
okay, that's leftover war stuff. So when it happens, it's not pleasant, but it doesn't spiral out of control now because I'm not grabbing onto it. And the same thing happens with when I have feelings of, oh, I should have been doing triathlons this whole time, during my break from
Mm-hmm.
it, or I should be doing this, I should be doing that. That's
Mm-hmm.
leftover stuff from growing up. And when I can realize
Mm-hmm.
that, then I can say, oh, okay, let me step back from that now. And I'm able to see it and not be immersed in it, just like we witness
Right.
our thoughts, but not be wrapped up in them.
Mm, I like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
using big past experiences like that can definitely change the way that you view life in general and challenges in life. That's something that the guest, Jeff McGregor, that we had on last week, talked
Mm-hmm.
about in ultra running. In that 100 mile, in that 100 miles of running, you're going to have every feeling, every emotion. You're gonna
Yeah. Uh-huh.
you're gonna feel like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. He talked about, and I think everyone, if you're listening to this, please go back, and you haven't listened to last week's episode, please go back and listen to it because Jeff does a great job of relating what he learns in ultra running to his life and how he deals with challenges in his life. Um, but he uses a couple things. One is past experience,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is just the knowledge that this too shall pass, whatever feeling. So
Yes.
those first 40 miles or something are always great for him, and he's like, this is amazing and I'm so stoked. And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
here comes the pain cave, and
Yeah.
not quite as happy. And but instead of giving up, instead of going, I can't move on, I'm stuck, sort of like, well, what happened last time I ran an ultra? I kept going during this period
Mm-hmm.
of a dark period mentally or physically, and saying like, this too shall pass, and I know that because it's done it before. And
Yes.
in life, everything that you experience is, you know, fleeting. every experience, good
Mm-hmm.
experiences, bad experiences, um, they're all fleeting. And so that's true in life. That's true in training, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and can we use guilt to help us grow? That's a question I have for you. Can we use guilt to help us grow and expand?
I think we can. I think every feeling we have is a catalyst to change if we are able to see it that way. Because I'll use an example is the way I see layers of feelings surrounding grief, for example,
Mm,
is, on the top might be numbness if you've found yourself detaching. And then there's the anger below that. And then there's the sadness and hurt and fear.
mm,
And below all of that, I no longer see that as the bottom. The bottom is actually a good place to be, because underneath all of that is connection and joy and love. And when you can bust through the the grief and the hurt and the unpleasant feelings, you can get to the love. So I think grief, or excuse me, guilt, you can use the same way, because you can see that, okay, this is not the place I
mm,
end up. This is just a catalyst to get to where I need to be. Because if you look at the guilt, then you can say,
mm,
okay, how do I springboard from this guilt to inspiration? How do I flip that and see the same thing, except I can find inspiration and not ways to beat myself down. But it takes that
mm,
recognition, and it takes, I like to look at things as waves, like too shall
mm,
pass. The way I
mm,
visualize that as a wave, and especially if it's a difficult emotion to deal with, like guilt, I'll say, where am I on this wave? Am I still ramping up? Am I at the crest? Am I at the top? Am I coming back down? But once I know it's a wave and that this too shall pass, I know that if I simply keep breathing, keep going, that the feeling will subside when it's ready, and that it's not going to be, I don't have to
mm,
catastrophize and say that it's going to stick and it's going to be like this intense for this long, because it'll pass.
mm. Right, right. I love the visualization of waves because I
Mm-hmm.
live near the ocean and I can picture
Yeah.
them coming up on the beach and then receding. And Half Moon Bay, the waves are fairly large, so I can relate to that. Um,
Yeah.
just as an aside, whenever I think about the ocean, I immediately think about sharks, though. So I might need another
Yeah.
visual. um, and we just
Yeah.
had a totally off topic, but there's a lot of open water swimmers in Half Moon Bay. And then just north of us in Montera, when I mean just north, I'm talking like 3 miles north. So not
Mm-hmm.
really north, pretty much part of the same area that we just recently had great white hanging out. Uh, and there was a big dead whale on there was a big dead whale on the beach with a huge chunk out of it. So great
Mm-hmm.
white just took a little snack, and then the great white was spotted, just kind of hanging out in this little cove area. And and then 3 miles south of that, people are like, I'm swimming ocean water. And they're like, well, I'm swimming at the jetty. And my thought
Yeah.
is, oh, does the shark go, oh, I don't go by the Half Moon Bay jetty? Or does the shark
Yeah,
just go where the
exactly.
fuck it wants to go? That's just my question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the latter.
so,
I think it's the latter. Wherever it wants to
yes, a
go.
comedian, I think Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock are one of the, exactly. One of these comedians said, if a chicken's hanging out in my yard, you're in my house. There's a good chance you're going to be my meal. And when we get in the water, we're in the shark's backyard. So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But back to our topic. um, One of the things that was suggested is to get out of the echo chamber. And I like that idea because I've heard of that that thought in relation to current events and news, that we're because of social media and the way our news is delivered to us now through an algorithm, excuse me, you end up in sort of an echo chamber of hearing what, something that's in line with your beliefs. And the thought of that is, in terms of training, is that you yourself are the echo chamber, that you are the one who's creating that for yourself, that loop.
Yeah.
And, um, and that talking to someone externally about what you're going through is a potential route out of that echo chamber.
And what does that look like? Like, how does one do that?
Good question. I think a couple things. Like, for example, talking with you about it on this show is helpful for me to
Uh huh.
normalize my experience in relation to other people. And sometimes when you're saying things out loud, it takes some of the strength out of them.
Yes.
And so,
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
and
Hey, that's my
I'm
whole
not, I'm,
trade, right?
yes, exactly. That's true. That is your whole
Yeah,
trade. Maybe you should open up a
it's,
line of talking to endurance athletes, therapizing endurance
yeah,
athletes.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's a way to demystify a lot of the stuff because when it's just in our head, it might not be a fully formed thought, but it might be a feeling with a couple thought strings attached to it. But when we say it out loud, we can either see the fallacies, what's wrong with that train of logic, or we can laugh about it, or we can find that
Mm-hmm.
as a stepping stone to something else. And I just
Mm-hmm.
maybe the image of a stepping stone is well, it's shark free too, but it's also can be a helpful one because if we get sucked up in a certain feeling like guilt or fear or sadness, then it feels like it's a pit of quicksand. But if we see it as a stepping stone instead, and say like, oh, I can find joy through this. This is a
Mm-hmm.
catalyst for me. Grief has been that catalyst to joy because it connects to my heart, and I know that I care and that I love because I'm hurting because I love. So I can connect to it that way. And
Mm-hmm.
we can find the same way through our sport, I think, is by just spending some time letting those feelings air out and not being afraid of them, but also not being immersed or ruminating or getting stuck with them, and just seeing them for what they are, as fleeting sensations that we can experience and not die
Mm-hmm.
and not get stuck in. Say, okay, if this is a feeling, if I see it as a catalyst to joy, then I can say, oh, good, I'm on the way. Instead of, oh no, not this, I'm going to be stuck in
Mm-hmm.
this forever. It changes the relationship we
Mm-hmm.
have with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah, that totally makes 100% sense to me. I think that talking about it with another person, which will right size the problem for me. This is true
Mm-hmm.
in all areas of my life. Definitely use it as a tool with my sobriety to right size. So I'll go to a meeting and I'll
Yes.
speak about whatever's bothering me, and saying it out loud definitely is like, oh, maybe this isn't the life ending
Mm-hmm.
problem that I thought it was.
Yeah.
Um, I've been sharing a lot lately about feeling resentment towards others.
Mm.
Um, and, when I say it out loud, I'm like, whoa, this is some petty shit. I'm not going to die. I'm actually not going to die from this. Um,
Yeah.
and so, so that's good. And then the other piece of it is, I think, getting out of the echo chamber is normalizing imperfection
Uh-huh.
through other people's stories, to go, oh, it's not just me. Other people feel self judgment and guilt over their training.
Yeah.
That definitely is
Yeah.
a helpful tool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You
And
know what? Oh, go ahead. No, I want you to finish.
no, that was it. That was it.
Okay.
It's the end of my
What,
sentence.
what I found really helps me is if I can find someone else who can interject humor in a difficult situation.
Mm.
I'm thinking back, and if we go back to this whole Go Ruck endurance event, part of the thing I remember was that you'd have to get to certain checkpoints at certain times, and they make them really hard to get to. And if you don't, you get punished, and you do push-ups and sit-ups and et cetera, et
Oh,
cetera. It's just part of the game. Yeah, and I know I paid for this too. Um, but I was getting wrapped up in the fact that we weren't going to make this checkpoint in time. And I was next to this other guy, and he was,
mm,
Marine recon. And I was like, we're not going to make it in time. And I'm starting to not panic, but just kind of, you know, get
mm.
worked up about it. And he goes, "Yeah, you win some, you lose some, And I said, you know what? Yeah, that's right. What's the worst?
Wow.
What's the worst that's going to happen? Yeah. And so I was able to
That
kind of detach from making it, or else we were going to die.
right.
But yeah, you win some, you lose some.
I
And I was
mean,
like, and I
the
was able
brain
to
is probably
laugh about
like,
it with him. Yeah.
that's yeah. That's very, very helpful is having some levity in the situation because truly we're not
Oh
going to
yeah.
die doing our sport,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You
it's
can, if like in the middle of like some difficult sets in the pool, or doing hill repeats,
mhm,
or stuff at the track, or, you got someone who
mhm.
can throw in a joke that gets you out of your head. That's
Mhm.
perfect. And if you can be that
Yeah,
person for someone
yeah.
else, even better. Right.
Right. Oh yeah, that's such a good feeling. Helping other people out on the course and being able to um, bring some levity to the situation
Yes.
is definitely a good feeling. Yes, I have experienced that. I experienced that with another person of color, another black person on the course. We came upon each other and we were sort of like walk jogging for a little bit um, in Ironman, and it was like, look at our black asses. We out here doing some white shit and we're killing it. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And
you
then you're
know,
out of your
there's
head. Right.
a myth that black people can't swim.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
We're like, we swam. We didn't die. So, and it allowed me to like start running again, just that little bit
Mm-hmm.
of laughing was like, yep, I'm going to. So, um, just to wrap up a little bit, one suggestion that AI had, which I think is a great suggestion, if you're really, feeling the self judgment and the guilt, and you're not in a position, or even if you are in a position where it's there's a question of whether or not you want to keep doing this, and maybe you need to pivot and let go of it being your whole identity. But let's just say that you are struggling with the self judgment and guilt and training and the comparing and despairing and all of that stuff we just talked about. One suggestion could be to journal about it and to
Mm-hmm.
kind of do a couple of questions, in your journaling. So, what did I show up for today? In a positive way. What did I show up for? Um, Number two is how did I speak to myself during training today? What was my negative
Mm-hmm.
self-tape? What was good? Not just bad, but you know, I reminded myself I'm making progress, or I might be going
Mm-hmm.
slower today, but I might need to be in zone one. um, and then the last question is what guilt or self judgment came up today. So actually naming it. Don't try to fix it. Just bring it to light and just name it. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
third and final suggestion for journaling. So I would say today, um, our sort of summary and suggestion for the listener is when, and I wouldn't say if you feel self guilt and judgment, because I'm pretty sure self judgment and guilt. I'm sure we all feel it at different times,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and so when that crops up for you, try writing things down. Try writing these three questions down. What did I show up for today? How did I speak to myself during training? And what self judgment or guilt came up for me today? And just see if that helps take some of the the sting out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I have one other suggestion as a non-AI person.
Mm-hmm.
What's really helped me, yeah, what's really helped me uh, when I recognize these feelings is to either be in a yoga class or just doing a few simple stretches and infuse it with
Ah.
gratitude of being in my body and grateful that I am in my body and my body is allowing me to do these poses or these stretches and feeling that in my
Mm.
core, because sometimes journaling will help me get there, but sometimes just a simple stretch my
Mm-hmm.
lower back maybe, or being in a pose in a yoga class and just flipping it around from, oh, I'm not good enough to, oh my God, I get to be here right now. I'm alive. I get to
Mm-hmm.
be here right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guarantee that I wasn't owed this moment. I get to be here, and renewing that way. So that's
Right.
really helped me.
Yes, I love that idea of using a stretch and then kind of reframing like I'm not owed this moment. That's a
Uh huh.
pretty powerful statement. I, I get this moment is when you put it that way, like um, whether or not I'm, you know, dealing with some hip issues with my gravel biking, it's okay. Like I don't have to climb the steepest hill. I'm not
Uh huh.
owed that. I can climb a less steep hill and take care of myself, and it's going to be okay.
Yes.
It's going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
okay. And
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, I think we did it.
I think
Um,
we did it. Yeah.
Listeners, if
Yes.
you want to help us out here, um, check out our YouTube channel. You can just search on YouTube for Ginger and Chocolate Podcast, and all of our episodes are up there for you to watch if you'd rather watch. And one thing about YouTube that you may not know is that our old episodes, like when we were called age groupies, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
those episodes are on there. Now, those are just audio, not video, but you can't hear them in your podcast app feed. They're not there. So they live on YouTube. So that's a place if you want to check out prior, past episodes. An example
Mm-hmm.
would be we've had Lisa Sheeper, the vegan nutritionist, on this year, but she's also on back way back on old Ginger Chocolate podcast, and so you can look her up on YouTube if you want to hear more from her.
Yeah. Another one,
Alrighty,
speaking of black
so
triathletes, is Morgan Lattimore is the ghetto Buddha, as he calls himself. So
yes,
a lot of
yes,
episodes to check out. A lot of episodes to check out on YouTube. So take a look.
absolutely, yeah. And if you're so inclined, subscribe. We would love it.
Yeah. Uh huh.
Oh, alrighty, y'all. We will see you next week, and we're going to have another great episode. Most likely an interview. We have a couple interviews in the can, so I think that we will drop one next week. That's our plan, but it could be a surprise, Mike and Lindsay episode too. That's a possibility. So tune in next week, and until then, we will see you out on the trails, the road, in the pool.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.